I had an experience with the Klan. They came to my house when I was little. But my mother, this is a strong woman, my mother, she went right to the door and opened it and gave them candy. And my mother used to tell me this thing, I don't even know if you remember, but you said this to me more than once. You said, son, sometimes you have to be a lion so you can be the lamb you really are.
This shows they were actually better in the 1940s. It was bad, it was evil, but what happened? Something changed. They committed less crimes.
Maybe they were afraid. I mean, 4,000 black men, women, and children were killed in violent lynch mobs.
That's your explanation, but
racial terror permeated American culture for hundreds of years.
Black America is worse than it has been.
There are protests and vigils and prayers going up for a despicable, deplorable, detestable, loathsome white man. A 21-year-old young black man was found lynched in his university campus.
Dave Chappelle is once again dropping hard truths, this time calling out the hypocrisy surrounding the national meltdown over Charlie Kirk's assassination. Now, let's be real. No one should be celebrating Kirk's death. But the response has been completely over the top. His body flown on Air Force Two, flags lowered to half-mast, lying in state, talks of a statue in the Capitol, and even a Presidential Medal of Freedom. All this for someone who never even held public office? That's not normal. Now compare that to the silence around two recent lynchings in Mississippi. College student Trey Reed and a homeless man, Corey Zacchatis, were both found hanging from trees. Police rushed to say there was no foul play, but given Mississippi's long, brutal history of lynching and the political climate we're in, this absolutely deserves more investigation. And yet, crickets. Barely any media coverage. No outrage. No national mourning. Just silence. Meanwhile, the reaction to Charlie Kirk's death has been explosive. Politicians, celebrities, pundits, social media, everyone is weighing in. And here's the kicker. People are actually losing their jobs simply for saying they don't care about Kirk's death. Once again, America is showing us the double standard of whose lives matter and whose don't.
Yesterday at 5 p.m., I was fired from my job for posting a video saying I don't care about Charlie Kirk's death.
Meanwhile, the deaths of those two men in Mississippi barely registered in the news. And now, Dave Chappelle is asking the same question a lot of us are thinking. Why are people being punished for not mourning the death of a man who was openly racist, while two clear cases of lynching are treated like background noise? So if you're tired of being gaslit into thinking Charlie Kirk's death is the only story that matters, stick around. Because in this video, we're breaking down how Mississippi might be quietly bringing back lynchings and why the mainstream media is trying to keep you distracted from the truth.
What the 60s must have been like for anybody. What was it, 8 or 9 assassinations? What does that do to a generation? Having lived through that and having known those people. This is me. I imagine I'd still be angry.
Many people agree that Charlie's death is tragic, just like any loss of life. But what we cannot ignore is how America is whitewashing the legacy of a man who openly pushed white supremacist rhetoric. Trump already ordered flags flown at half-staff for Kirk. And within 24 hours of his death, Congresswoman Nancy Mace went on X to announce she'll be introducing a resolution to let Charlie Kirk lie in honor at the U.S. Capitol Rotunda. Her statement read, Charlie Kirk devoted his life to defending freedoms, defending our nation. He inspired millions, led countless souls to Christ, and never wavered in defense of the First Amendment. Such a legacy makes him uniquely worthy of this distinction. But let's just stop for a second, because this is absurd. The honor of lying in the Capitol Rotunda has only been granted to a select few private citizens in American history, people whose lives were defined by extraordinary sacrifice or service to humanity. One of those people was Rosa Parks, and now Republicans want to put Charlie Kirk in the same category as Rosa Parks, a man who spent his career spreading racist talking points, dismissing civil rights as a mistake, and targeting marginalized communities. The comparison is beyond insulting.
Condemn the Civil Rights Act of 1964 as a huge mistake.
Correct.
This is gaslighting on a national scale. They're trying to convince the public that a man who built his career on hate deserves to be honored alongside people who literally sacrificed everything for justice. And it only gets more surreal. Charlie Kirk's casket was flown from Utah to Arizona on Air Force Two, with J.D. Vance himself escorting it. As if that wasn't already bizarre, the military honor guard was ordered to carry his casket. The backlash was immediate. Even veterans were outraged, calling it a disgrace and a slap in the face to everyone who's actually served this country. One user on X wrote, "Black soldiers must look at that task with a bit of nausea." And they're not wrong. This is the same Charlie Kirk who once said he would avoid a flight if the pilot was black. That's just one example of the vile rhetoric he was known for. Another furious commenter said, "It's a shame the Air Force Honor Guard is carrying Charlie Kirk's casket. The Pentagon owes the American people an explanation. Kirk never served. He mocked veterans, spread hate, fueled division, and died doing it. This isn't honoring service. It's politicizing sacrifice. It's an insult to every fallen soldier. Let's not forget, this is the same man who claimed black people were better off before the Civil Rights Act and argued that black women lacked the brainpower to succeed without affirmative action. And yet, somehow, he's being treated like a national hero.
Without affirmative action?
This shows they were actually better in the 1940s. It was bad, it was evil, but what happened? Something changed. They committed less crimes.
Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. Play cut 52.
Meanwhile, black folks who are just trying to live their lives are being dragged into the circus. They're being blamed, scapegoated, and even punished for supposedly celebrating Kirk's assassination. Take that Texas student who was expelled after someone secretly recorded her joking about Kirk in a private conversation. Others have lost jobs, been harassed online, or targeted simply because they didn't shed tears for a man who openly declared civil rights a mistake. Just think about that. So now, not only are we being forced to sit through a state-sponsored mourning parade for someone who stood against everyone who wasn't a straight white conservative man, but we're also told that if we don't grieve the same way, we're the problem. That's gaslighting, plain and simple. And while this national spectacle unfolds around Charlie Kirk, here's what's barely being mentioned. The same week Kirk was killed, 2 men were found hanging from trees in Mississippi. One of them, DeMar Trayvon Trey Reed, was just 21 years old, a black college student at Delta State University in Cleveland. The other, Corey Zacchates, was a 36-year-old white homeless man in Vicksburg. Both deaths are surrounded by suspicious circumstances, but instead of asking questions, the nation's attention is locked on glorifying a white supremacist.
Just right off.
Authorities say the body of 21-year-old DeMar Trayvon Trey Reed was found hanged from a tree by a faculty member near the pickleball courts. Word spread quickly throughout the Cleveland campus, leaving students and others concerned and worried.
Well, because I am a black student, hearing that happened to another black student, it really made me feel, it's make me feel unsafe.
I do have to walk to class, and I like to go walk on the track, and it would be happy to know like what happened.
Local and state investigators immediately started looking into the incident. DSU Police Chief Michael Peeler says investigators found no evidence.
Authorities were quick, almost too quick, to declare there was no foul play in Trey Reed's death. But his family isn't buying it. They're demanding an independent autopsy because the official story just isn't
adding up.
And members of Reed's family are insisting on a thorough investigation.
Please, 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 please do your research on this. Do not let them sweep nothing else under the rug. Enough is enough.
Corey Zacchates' death raises just as many red flags. Same method, same timing, yet authorities have kept almost everything under wraps. According to Yahoo, police say they found a man hanging from a tree in a wooded area near the Ameristar Casino. The Warren County coroner, Doug L. Husky, identified him as 36-year-old Corey Zacchates. He was discovered on Monday, September 15th, around 10:30 a.m. Beyond that, officials have shared almost nothing. What makes this even more disturbing is the timing. Corey's body was found just hours before Trey Reed's was discovered. 2 hangings in Mississippi in 2025 within the same day, while Charlie Kirk supporters are out here openly calling for a civil war. Coincidence? That's for you to decide. But here's what we do know. The mainstream media has buried these stories while flooding the airwaves with endless coverage of Charlie Kirk. And here's something you can't ignore. Corey was white, but he was also homeless. Just 2 days before his death, Fox News host Brian Kilmeade went on live TV and suggested that homeless people should be executed by lethal injection. Then, less than 48 hours later, a homeless man turns up hanging from a tree in Mississippi. Are we really supposed to believe that's just a coincidence?
His body was found.
Billions of dollars to mental health and the homeless population. A lot of them don't want to take the programs. A lot of them don't want to get the help that is necessary. You can't give them a choice. Either you take the resources that we're going to give you, or you decide that you're going to be locked up in jail. That's the way it has to be now.
Or involuntary lethal injection or something. Just kill them.
Yeah, Brian, why did it have to get to this point?
Right. I would say this. We're not voting for the right people. In North Carolina, wake up.
When Brian Kilmeade goes on national TV and says homeless people should be dealt with using lethal injection, let's be clear. He's talking about Americans, veterans, trauma survivors, some of the most vulnerable people in this country. Instead of housing, health care, or compassion, he's calling for state-sanctioned executions. And yet, if you make a joke about Charlie Kirk, you can lose your job. That's the hypocrisy Dave Chappelle is pointing out, the same kind he called out after the Capitol riots when he compared it to the way Colin Kaepernick was vilified. These are dark times. On one side, America is working overtime to turn Charlie Kirk into a saint. On the other, 2 men were found hanging from trees in Mississippi, one of them a young black college student, and the story barely made a ripple in national news. So when people say the system is broken, no. The system is working exactly as designed. This is psychological warfare, meant to make you doubt your own eyes and silence your outrage. Don't let the media, politicians, or influencers gaslight you into thinking you're crazy for noticing the double standard. So let's talk about it. Why is Charlie Kirk's death treated like a national emergency, while Trey Reed and Corey Zakotti's are erased before their stories are even told? Why is grief mandatory for a man who said civil rights was a mistake, while actual lynchings in 2025 are brushed aside like background noise? What does that say about where this country is headed? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation won't happen on News Nation, CNN, or Fox News. It has to happen here.